listener production.
Hello, Sasha Barbagat with you for today's episode of The Briefing. Last month, social media site Reddit made its long-awaited debut on the US stock market at $34 a share. It's nothing new for social media companies to want to go public, but the news has got frequent users of the site worried.
One of the key risks they keep coming back to is we have a very passionate but very unpredictable user base. And, one day they might just freak out and stop using Reddit because of something we've done.
In the second half of today's ep, we discuss what Reddit's IPO means for its owners and also its 73 million daily users. First, though, it is time for the headlines with Katrina Blowers. It is Tuesday, the 2nd of April.
Hey Sasha, hi everyone. Well, Australia could become a dumping ground for nuclear waste under the terms of the AUKUS deal. So this is according to a parliamentary inquiry, and AUKUS is the new defence pact Australia has reached with the UK and the US. So the inquiry says that as part of new laws to establish a safety framework for our planned nuclear-powered submarines, the pact could also allow the US and UK to send waste here. This is a bit of an interesting one, Sasha, especially because our Defence Minister, Richard Marles, has previously accused the Greens of fear-mongering when they've brought this up in the past. He's said that the government would never accept this kind of waste from other nations, but the new laws do allow for it.
Yeah, and the legislation says it would allow for the creation of facilities for, quote, managing, storing or disposing of radioactive waste from an AUKUS submarine. And it defines an AUKUS submarine as either an Australian or a UK-US submarine and includes such a submarine that is not complete. So that could be because it's being constructed or being disposed of. Both the UK and the US have been struggling to deal with their own waste as no long-term high-level waste facilities have been created yet.
This bill was introduced in November last year and was referred to a Senate inquiry, which is due to report on the 26th of April, so only a few weeks away. I was looking too, Sasha. It's heard from engineers who've said things like, we don't really know how to store this radioactive waste just yet, but he would suggest that you'd need some kind of a strategy for around about 100,000 years of storage. So that's a little bit worrying.
The thing with nuclear that I think freaks people out is how long it lasts and how dangerous it can be. We've seen, disasters around the world, and I think people just have that immediate fear reaction to nuclear, which I can understand. Look, it's not till the early 2040s when Australia will get its first delivery of nuclear-powered submarines under the AUKUS deal, but we do know, according to the Australian government at least, that the first for the UK is going to be in the early 2030s, which really isn't that far away. So these conversations definitely need to be had now. We've heard from the Australian Conservation Foundation's nuclear-free campaigner. His name's Dave Sweeney, and he's described this whole issue as highly disturbing. While other experts say, and you kind of touched on it there, Katrina, that the process for disposing of nuclear waste is still in its infancy. So we still have a lot to learn. So as I said, we've got 5-ish plus years before the first submarines start rolling out, and that'll be in the UK. So, something needs to be decided now.
Yeah, and all I can say is if, in fact, Australia is going to set up any waste facilities, we are solving a huge, huge problem for our AUKUS partners. So I'd want to know, what are we getting in return? Witnesses and Palestinian officials have described scenes of death and destruction at Gaza's Shifa Hospital following the IDF's withdrawal from the complex. Israeli troops have been holding the hospital for the last 2 weeks and claim to have killed Hamas militants and seized weaponry and intelligence documents. In a statement, the Israeli Defence Minister says they've eliminated the terrorist base while praising the actions of soldiers. The number of people dead inside Shifa has not been verified. There's been some difficulties accessing the hospital and there are reports of malnourished survivors.
Meantime, thousands have taken to the streets of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem in protests against the Israeli government for failing to secure the release of hostages still being held by Hamas. These are the largest protests Israel has seen since the start of the war, Katrina, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is facing increased pressure to resign or to call a new election. Protesters say the focus should be on getting hostages out over military objectives.
Yeah, speaking of those hostages and the numbers around them, at least the numbers that we know, while 105 people were released during a temporary truce last year, another 130 that were kidnapped are either dead or they're still being held by Hamas and other militant groups.
Meantime, Israel is being blamed for an airstrike that has hit the Iran consulate in Syria, killing. The reports are mixed, but 6 people is the last number we got, including a senior commander of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps. Now, the White House has confirmed it's looking into the airstrike, and if it's confirmed that it did come from Israel, it will be the first time it has attacked an Iranian embassy. Tehran has responded saying that its response will be harsh. So lots still bubbling away in the Middle East, Katrina. Channel 10 has made an 11th hour bid to reopen its defamation defence against Bruce Lehrmann. It comes just 2 days before Justice Michael Lee was due to give his ruling in the multi-million-dollar lawsuit, which is set down for this Thursday. Now, a reminder, Lehrmann is suing the network and Lisa Wilkinson over an interview that aired on The Project with Brittany Higgins, who has alleged she was raped by Lehrmann at Parliament House in 2019. Lehrmann has denied the allegations and has never been convicted of the crime.
Channel 10 has now made an urgent application to call fresh evidence from a former Channel 7 producer who's completed a signed affidavit which claims Lehrmann helped leak Brittany Higgins' private text messages to 7. A hearing's been called for 5 p.m. today. Justice Lee will use that to consider whether to reopen the case for the evidence to be presented. And if you were excited for fairy bread from Subway, footlong fairy bread, turns out it was an April Fool's prank. They wrote on their Insta, hundreds and thousands of you had no idea you needed this. Sprinkle some nostalgia into your day with our new Subway footlong fairy bread. I reckon they might have just been sounding out the market and people want this. They do. We also spotted some other great April Fool's jokes. Arnott's unveiling the wagon wheels inspired by chicken crimpy shapes. That's complicated. But, you know, maybe a salty wagon wheel. Chicken salt pretty much makes everything taste delicious.
Yeah, I guess you could use a chicken crimpy biscuit and sandwich it between, I don't know, some sort of, but that's the thing, you need the jam. So what represents the jam in a savoury wagon wheel? That is the question.
Oh, what a rabbit hole.
We also saw the CSIRO launch, quote unquote, launch the world's first Magpie translator app. Magpie Translate, allowing you to translate hundreds of common phrases between English and magpies and learn dozens of helpful Maggie phrases. I really like that because I love magpies, so I'd love to be able to talk to them. Turns out it was all an April Fool's joke. Jetstar, this is another one I liked, announced we could reserve an armrest for just $2. I think we've all had that moment on a flight where we fought with someone over the centre armrest. And Hi Smile, which is a toothpaste and beauty brand, launched a Vegemite flavoured toothpaste, Katrina. Delicious.
I really want to see what influencers do with that Vegemite content. That's what I would be wanting on TikTok.
Absolutely.
As wellness. I think that would provide for some really beautiful shots. But, you know, we were laughing about the armrest. Again, that's something I'd pay for. And we were laughing about how the CEO of Ryanair is really genuinely trying to roll stuff like this out, like charging people $1 to use the toilet. So, you know, this could be in our future too.
I wouldn't put anything past our airlines, Katrina. They love finding something to charge us for. Hey, thanks so much for joining us for the headlines today. Next up, it's our deep dive into Reddit's IPO and what it could change for the social media site. The internet can often feel like a pretty gross place to be. While it connects us more than we've ever been before, it's also rife with misinformation, hateful rhetoric, clickbait, advertising, scams, bullying, identity theft, abuse material. Need I go on? There is one place that exists, though, that feels more like the internet of old. A place to exchange ideas, interact with like-minded people, and better yet, do it all anonymously. I'm talking about Reddit, the 20-year-old social media site with over 70 million unique daily users. It exists as a host for over 100,000 forums called subreddits. Topics span the mundane, like Oz property chat, to the wholesome, cats standing up, to the downright weird, like rate my poo. But all that could be about to change after Reddit's owners decided to go public and list it on the US stock exchange. Shareholders could push for big changes, like more ads or shutting down certain subreddits. Their main focus will be making money. So, what's ahead for Reddit in the wake of its IPO? And how will its passionate user base react? Could it be the end of the internet of old? Joining me now in studio to break it all down for us is James Hennessy, tech and business journalist and host of the Down Round podcast, which you can find on the Listener app. James, thanks for being here. For those who might not know, what is Reddit and what makes it different?
So Reddit is a social news platform. It's been around since about 2006. So it's been a fixture of the internet for a little while. Kind of occasionally it's classified as a social media platform, but it's a little bit different to like a Facebook or a Twitter or something like that. It's more of sort of an outgrowth of old internet forums, which people might remember from back in the day. It's a collection of what are called subreddits, which are little communities based around everything from, there might be a subreddit for movies, r/movies, r/games for video games, all the way through to, knitting, DIY, cars, any topic you can think of, any specific TV show, any hobby, anything will most likely have a subreddit and sort of a thriving little community where people can post links, share stories, talk amongst themselves about that topic.
And the interesting thing with these subreddits is that they're run by moderators who are just volunteers, and they spend a lot of time and effort on moderating those subreddits, don't they? Yeah,
it's again just like the old internet forum way of doing things, where there's kind of people who donate their time because they're passionate about it. Also, there's absolutely a little aspect of having a power trip as well. You get to run the little community. You get to basically sort out bad behavior yourself as opposed to something like Facebook where there's sort of universal moderation policies. In this case, each subreddit has its own little rules in addition to Reddit's overall ones.
All right, so with all that in mind, tell us what happened on the US stock exchange last month.
So Reddit went public. So it went through its initial public offering. You might have heard the term IPO. That essentially means Reddit is going from being a private company, which runs its own affairs, to being a public company available in the stock market where investors can purchase a share in much the same way as, you go on the ASX and buy stock.
And therefore would have shareholders who have a say in how things are run?
That's right. So they're selling off voting shares. People can go to the annual general meeting and have their say about how Reddit is being run.
What then has made Reddit pull the trigger now? And what does AI have to do with it?
For many companies, especially tech companies, the ultimate goal is one of two things. When you start a business and you're a founder, well, there's three alternatives. Either you run it for the rest of your life, but that's usually not what a founder is looking for. You either want to go public, which means you release on the stock market, or you sell to someone. So you hope that one day Microsoft or Facebook or whoever will buy your business. And the reason is that you want an exit. So the people that have been working at Reddit for many, many years, they have employee stock programs, which are kind of not worth very much until you go public or get acquired. So one reason is growth. You want your company to expand and grow and get investment and become larger and more important. And also you want all your employees who've been working there for a very long time and your founders to get their payday and actually become, the Mark Zuckerbergs, the tech billionaires that you hear so much about. That's because they've gone public, essentially. The AI question is a little bit different. There's a couple of things that have been hanging around in the background. The one thing that's to be aware of is that Reddit has not actually ever made a profit. So, a lot of people might be thinking, that sounds crazy that there's a business out there that is, losing money essentially. But tech companies often work on very, very long time horizons, right? Like Amazon, for example, didn't make money for quite a long time until one day they flipped the switch and they did. That's the dream, you lose money, you grow, and then one day you can be making billions and billions and billions of dollars of revenue. Reddit has always kind of struggled a little bit. And one reason for that is that their advertising product, because, most businesses, be it Facebook, be it Twitter, be it, Reddit, make money from advertising. They put ads in the content that you like to see. Reddit's not been as good as, let's say, Meta at building an ad product. And anyone who's used Reddit will know there's not that many ads. They're pretty unintrusive. It's certainly not like the ads that you'd see in like an Instagram story or TikTok or something like that. And they're usually for like kind of weird random businesses. They haven't really been successful at building up an ad product. But in their S1, which is kind of the document they put together to say, you know, when they first open their books and say, here's how much money we've been making, or in this case, not been making, here are the opportunities that we see. And one of the key opportunities that they've seen is in the world of AI. Because one thing Reddit does have, they may not have a great ad product, but they do have a ton of content. And they've got a ton of useful content. As anyone who's used Reddit will know, there's a lot of really, really fascinating content buried in all different sorts of subreddits. It's been a site for nearly 20 years, so they've accumulated a huge amount of data. That data is very, very useful to companies like OpenAI, companies like Google, companies like Apple, Microsoft, everyone that's currently training these AIs like ChatGPT, which you may have used. So Reddit is suddenly like, oh, hello, we actually have something that's super valuable, which is a really nice, clean data set, which isn't polluted by all the bots and spam that you often see in other social media sites. We can actually start selling that and make money in an avenue that's not advertising.
Okay, so we have seen this happen with other sites that are similar, social media platforms that have gone public. Talk us through the lessons that we've learned from those and what the long-term effects, I suppose, have been.
So, yeah, this is the critique that, you know, it's a natural part of a business growing but going public, but there are sort of consequences for it. You know, once you have shareholders really want one thing. At the end of the day, you know, some of them might have nobler intentions, but they want to make money. They want to see the company grow. They want to see the stock price go up. And what that means is the company needs to grow. The company needs to make more money. And some people might look at Reddit now, which, you know, love it or hate it, has a very, very specific ethos that people enjoy. Moderators have power. These little communities run as their own little fiefdoms that can kind of do whatever they want. But when a company needs to make money, they need to start instituting changes. That probably means more ads, and there almost certainly will be a lot more ads on Reddit. It could mean the leadership team getting a little bit spooked about some of the content that's in subreddits and being like, you can't be posting about that stuff anymore, because the shareholders are getting antsy about it. Reddit has tried to essentially smooth out some of that transition they offered 10% of the stock to moderators and their power users, people who have very high karma, which means they've posted lots of links that people love.
Yeah.
Part of that is kind of marketing to say, look, we're very community focused. But some part of it was also like, let's make sure some of our shareholder base are people who care about the platform and aren't just, you know, agnostic investors who want to make money. Mm-hmm. But you're absolutely right. There is a process that's observed in a lot of these companies where once they need to grow, they kind of dispense with the stuff that people actually loved about the platform and become all about how many ads can we put in front of the eyeballs of our users and stop caring about the core mission.
Yeah, which is something that I care about.
Uh-huh.
I am a Reddit user. Some of my favourite subreddits are, I like the yoga subreddit.
Yep.
I like the Jersey Shore subreddit.
Lovely.
I like the rugby union subreddit. And the thing I like about Reddit and the communities that I'm a part of is that it feels like the last bastion of the old internet, which was essentially designed as a communication tool, but also the way it used to be. You were anonymous. No one knew who you were. You could talk to people who thought about similar things you think about, engaged with similar things you do. And it was, you know, Reddit's not perfect. There's heaps of horrible stuff on Reddit.
Totally.
But I think the ethos, as you mentioned, is for it to be a supportive place for communities to exist. And there's a feeling, I think, among Reddit users that will disappear. Is that a risk?
I think that's absolutely a risk. I mean, one of the biggest expressions of sort of like the Reddit ethos, we're talking before about, you know, all these subreddits have individual moderators. When Reddit instituted some changes that these moderators didn't like, it was kind of a technical thing, but they started charging a cost for their API, which is how applications can access Reddit data. This was partially because of the fears around the AI stuff. Communities hated it, the moderators hated it, and they staged kind of like a strike where they shut down and locked the subreddits that they were managing so nobody could read them. For any other company in sort of the social media space, that's completely demented. Like Meta would not allow a huge portion of its users to just shut off a huge part of its website. But that is part of the kind of rock and roll earlier era of the internet where it was, as you say, everyone was pseudonymous. You could say that like speech was very free. It was kind of like uncontrolled and fun and cool and everyone having their own little communities, rather than the current world where it's like we're all slammed onto 3 websites.
Yeah.
We're all on Instagram, a bunch of us on Twitter, we're on TikTok, and it's all a bit samey.
And it's all very public square, isn't it? Where
Yes.
it's kind of everyone yelling at each other.
That's right.
Whereas the subreddits give you that unique opportunity to just engage with people who in most cases, even if you might disagree on points, you're in there because you have similar interests.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So there is a feeling, because, in the end, Reddit sort of like forced the hand of these moderators, forcibly eject some of them, replace them with people who were more happier to be an ally to Reddit, which sort of indicates that, they're at least ahead of the IPO, they were willing to put the boot down, which again has caused some people some consternation. But look, they've really expressed and said that, like, we know why our users use Reddit. Like, we know why this site remains popular, remains one of the most popular sites on the website, on the internet, sorry. There is hope, but there is, I don't think the fears are misplaced at all.
Yeah. Look, let's say, what you've described to us does happen. There's more advertising. There's a bigger crackdown on the content that's being published on Reddit that previously had been deemed as okay. How might users react, and how could that impact Reddit and its hopes of making money?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because in their S1, again, there's the document that they put for the IPO, there's a very, very, very long risk section, as many of them do because of the influence of lawyers. But one of the key risks they keep coming back to is we have a very passionate but very unpredictable user base. And, one day they might just freak out and stop using Reddit because of something we've done. And that point comes up over and over and over again. It's interesting because we have seen what happens. We've seen platforms die, essentially, for everything from, MySpace to more recent examples of platforms that sort of wither and die when they stop serving the purpose they were originally meant to serve. But there's the possibility that Reddit could wither and die if, they make some wrong moves. People are fickle. There's always something new place to spend your time. What I think will protect them a bit is that there actually isn't that many places on the internet like Reddit. There's really nothing left unless you go to like specific forums, which are still kind of kicking around, or, a new challenger pops up. But they've got a unique spot. They've got like a really interesting platform. They've got really unique content. I think they're well placed to chug along, but I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think it's one of those cases of users who are very passionate about Reddit freaking out that things might change. But as you said, it's good business sense for Reddit. It makes sense for them to go ahead. Hopefully things don't change too much to the point where, as you said, it withers and dies.
Totally.
Thanks, James.
No worries.
That's all for this morning's podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Be sure to check back the Savo at 3 for another deep dive. And if you did like today's podcast, why not share it with someone who might get something out of it too? We'd really appreciate it. I'm Sasha Barbagat. See you next time.
Listener.